Welcome to Technologies Now, the business edge, and this is a broker's perspective. I'm your host, David Urbach, and today we're diving into the intersection of real estate, business strategy, and technology with someone who's been shaping commercial markets for decades. Joining me is Lloyd Wertheimer, seasoned commercial broker and founder of JMS Commercial Real Estate. Lloyd's experience spans tenant representation, investment strategy, and the creative repositioning of commercial properties, all while embracing innovation in a rapidly changing market. Lloyd, it's great to have you here on the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that also. So, Lloyd, you began your career in sales and then transitioned into commercial real estate. What inspired that shift and what, lessons early on guide you still today?
Well, what started it was working with commercial real estate agents when I was opening some stores. It was when the big fan industry was, ceiling fans, and back in the late '70s, early '80s. And then from there, it was something that I always wanted to do. And I looked into it. One of the things that needed to be done was being able to financially start a career that only paid when you produce, aka commission only. And at that time, I had kids in school. I was looking to grow the family, and so I had those kind of responsibilities. Then, after the kids left, empty house, I took the leap. And it's an industry that takes up to 2 years to make a reasonable amount of money, up to five to making the money that's traditional with commercial real estate.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like I understand what you're saying with the commission only. I've been commission only primarily half of my career. My wife has her entire career. So we're used to the buildup of your business to where it, actually gives you some money back and the investment from in the beginning that it takes to get everything started. So I can absolutely appreciate
Yeah,
what you're saying.
exactly.
Yes. So JMS Commercial Real Estate Advisors is your firm. How did you carve out a niche in this, very competitive market?
Well, I started out by working at a small location in the town I worked in, and then I moved up to a regional as an agent for a local commercial real estate house brokerage, and then from there I went to a bigger one, and then I went to a national brokerage, and then after working for Lee and Associates for the time I did, I felt I've learned enough about the commercial market to step out and do something on my own. So I got a broker's license. I started a brokerage, and I fell into tenant representation for franchises. And because that's where I was the strongest, I did a lot of that coming up, even though I did listings and sales and all. This allows me to help people find something. When you work with franchises, you work with people who have invested already a lot of their own money, so they're going to open a business. So the removes it really lowers the chances of you not creating or doing a deal with them, because it's truly a partnership. They're going to open a business. I'm going to get them into a building. I'm going to negotiate the contracts and the leases and the letters of intent, not necessarily in that order. And we go forward. And I help people this way. It's, uh, I've been a football coach for 30 years with youth sports in high school. I give time to my community and things like that. So there was an inner drive that giving back is part of my nature.
That's fantastic. It's good to see that come back to you. The energy that you put out comes back to you in your business. And I'm not sure you necessarily bridge those two together, but I think I would, naturally think that, your success is based on overall as the person. And obviously you're doing a good job. Nobody survives your business very long unless they're good at their work. I'd say no question about that. So
It's nice to hear. Thanks. And I have a passion for what I do. And I think everyone in the workforce, whether you do what I do or anywhere else, there's that saying, if you have a passion for what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Commercial real estate's different every time you get a client, every time you do a deal. And that's the challenge. And it helps you grow as well as just enjoy what you do.
well, that's great advice overall beyond your industry. So, in your tenant representation business, what is the secret or what do you consider to be success when you've taken care of what, or what terms do you need to make sure you negotiate? What are the ins and outs that, someone would not know that hasn't been in that space? As in, why do you use someone like you, Lloyd?
Well, they use somebody like me because I'm my fiduciary responsibility is completely to my client. There's no dual representation because I do my business nationwide. I'm not working in a community of brotherhood. Commercial real estate is how do you say it? It's kind of a community that everyone knows each other's. When I worked in the town I did for the years I did, we all knew how to contact each other, how to make deals, what landlords wanted, and so you had to adhere to that game plan, so to speak. And so with working working with landlords and working with tenant reps, and then going into a town where you don't have any loyalties other than to your to client you're working with, makes it a whole lot easier to be stronger for your tenant than it does in your own hometown when somebody can say to you, Lloyd, what are you doing? This is what we got to do to get this deal done. And it's like, okay, you hear that, and you've got to be cooperative, so to speak. So when you're working in communities, that's always a factor. But when you're working in another part of the country and you're working with other brokers, all that you care about is your own client, not your anything else.
So it helps you stay focused on what is most important, which you'd be focused on anyway. But yeah, I can see the community, everybody does work together and has to work together to get deals done. Otherwise,
Yeah.
things don't make it to closing. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So
So what else? So what else I've done is I need to understand. I need to understand the terms, the needs of the landlord as well as the needs of my client. And a lot of times there's just uh, an explanation to my client about what to expect because what landlords expect. Not that I'm trying to sell. You got to be careful because sometimes that can sound like you're working for the landlord
right,
rather than for the client.
right.
A lot of the reality is investors use the phrase, if it was your money, would you do this kind of thing to your own clients? And sometimes you got to just be hard and straight away with them. And, but you always you know when to negotiate for what they need. You know what they can throw away sometimes in negotiations and what justifies your asking, whether it's a price or tenant improvements or term or for abated rent. You have to be able to justify that to the other side.
Yeah, to your point, you need to see things from the other person's perspective to make sure that you can negotiate the deal and make sure you're bringing your client along and making sure they understand this is how the process works. We'll try for your best interest, but there are certain standards we're going to have to deal with, and there's going to be some give and take, perhaps.
Yeah, a reality check.
A reality check, even better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of people out there who are who are junior real estate magnets, and at least they feel they are because they've read the internet, read this and been on the
No,
internet, and
right.
you know, yeah,
That's
and
terrible.
it's tough,
Yeah.
but it's fun.
So if I asked Chat GPT what I should look for in tenant representation, or you wouldn't even ask that question, you'd probably go in if you didn't know and say, what should I negotiate? How do I get my best deal? And, you know, pay the least, and get the best, rent abatement, get the most tenants. You can just go on and on, but you have to look at both sides of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about asking GPT that question because negotiation's an art, not a science, and AI is a science. So they might go down the line and tell you things like, you got to ask for this, you got to look for that, blah blah. But it also depends on who you're dealing with, because if you're dealing with a mom and pop owner, like a one man who just owns one property, their needs are different than say a regional owner, and a regional owner's needs are different than a REIT, a large national company. They all have different needs on how and what they need to get out of their property to make a profit and return on investments. Where a REIT would probably give you more tenant improvement allowance than reduce the rent because they want to keep value in their building so they can have borrowing power. Where a mom and pop would say, "Well, I don't have any money, but I'll give you some free rent, and I'll give you some lower my rental a little more than I should." It's not just every like I said, every deal is different. That's what makes it a challenge and a fun one.
Yes.
You got to know who you're dealing with, and you not only need to know the client and the tenant you're representing, but you got to know who you're dealing with.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I know in any negotiation that I'm involved in, I am
Mhm.
certainly interviewing the other party to find out what they're trying to accomplish out of this. I don't do the same work that you do, so I won't pretend to be a professional in your space. Is anyone listening? Talk to Lloyd. Don't talk to David on this. And in negotiation, if you can find what their goals are, is it they want a little bit longer term from the ownership side as opposed to the tenant
Hmm.
side? Can we give here or there? As opposed to going in like it's a car sale where, it's a net sum game where, if I pay less for the car, I win more and you get less. It's not like that at all. We're all trying to have a win-win because it becomes a relationship because you're going to, be a tenant for X period of time. And, if they do well and negotiate well, you also have to think if they're making sure they can cash flow and these sorts of things. But you obviously take a look at all these angles and figure out what's going to serve your client and, when it's not a fit. I think that's important as well. I don't know what are your
And educating your client too, when they make the statement, well, it's been empty for so long. Isn't some money better than none? And the answer is no. Sometimes no money is better than less money because it lowers the value of the building. If he was to put somebody there at 50% of the normal rate, because the tenant's leases is what bring value to a building. That's the money coming in that the bank looks at to loan or stabilize the building and be comfortable with the loan they gave to the owner. Not just isn't some money better than none.
right? Yeah, because you can have your vacancy factor in there. All right, I won't get into anything technical. I know where you're going with all that, Lloyd. So I appreciate your expertise in that space. So you're working in all sorts of markets. How do you see these markets being different for your clients? I mean, are they completely different other than obviously New York City is more expensive than the middle of Missouri, for example? We understand these, but what do you see? You see norms in certain areas, or is it more a matter of is it a REIT versus a mom and pop versus a regional owner?
But if you're looking at it from just one side of the world and it being different on the other side of the country, you have to know the market. The perspective of trying to know what's going on with you and gee, why are they doing this and how come it's this means nothing. It is about what the market is, what the rates are, et cetera. So when a client comes to me and we're looking in New York and we live in small town USA, and they go, well, wait a minute, we're moving there to do this and the rates are only blah, blah, blah. Well, if they haven't done, especially it's going to be a franchise. And the franchise has got to do a business plan and have profit and loss, and they got to justify it to the franchisor. So when you're opening a business in a town, it's what the market is, and it, the market sets a value for everything. Somebody wants to know what the price is. The bottom line is it's market. It's what the market is, and you try to get market rates less than market rates for your client as a tenant rep, and the listing agent tries to get at least what the landlord wants. So it's different from area to area, and you just have to know what it is to adjust to it, adjust with the thinking, because all building owners have the same protocol in what they need to make money, no matter where you are. A tilt-up concrete building is a tilt-up concrete building, regardless of what market it's in. A retail store in a shopping center is a retail store in a shopping center. And the negotiations for the space just has to do with that area. You can't come in and can't ask New York rates in Podunk, nowhere USA. It just doesn't happen, right?
Right.
It's that simple.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So along those lines, what's been your most difficult negotiation that you've been involved in that was successful in the end? So give us a war story.
As far as difficulty of the process, it would be one I did last year in Dallas, Texas, for a franchisor, where the client did negotiating in another industry for their business, their business, and they wanted to be a negotiator in the commercial real estate world with their tactics and argue with the person they hired who's been doing this for such a X amount of period of time. It's like arguing with your dentist when you're doing your taxes. Anyway, so that was the most difficult because the client was just off the wall, talking to the other side, talking to people that she didn't need to, making choices that didn't work, that maybe that she thought was right. That was the most difficult part of it. At the end of the day, it worked out fine. The deal closed. They're opening a really nice restaurant and a event area, and life goes on.
Nice. Okay. So it ended well. We just had to get past the person that didn't know what they were doing, but felt they were a big time negotiator. And I'm glad you didn't name any names because we don't need that out there.
No, no, I wouldn't want that either
No.
for me.
Yeah, no question about it. So you're described as a commercial real estate mentor with AARE, or however you pronounce it, AARE Real Estate Services. So what do you think are the top three qualities of a young broker or a young broker must have today? I mean, do they need to have ethics, a network, tech savvy? What do they need to be successful?
Well, to be successful, I think it's different than the items that you just. I think they need to be ethical. I mean, that's a character issue. Then, as a person, you would hope that they're ethical and the good work habits. What you need in commercial real estate is persistence, self esteem, because you're going to get rejected a lot, perseverance, and the ability to follow up, and put your nose to the grindstone and work hard. It's a relationship business, and it's a business where, the only thing you really have to make money in commercial real estate is your time and your knowledge. The time to go out and pound the streets and meet people and talk with them, and the knowledge to give to them about the world, the industry that they're trying to work in. If they're a business wanting to move up or down or renegotiate a lease. So you have to be the person, the professional that knows how to do that for them.
Excellent. And then we're a technology company. How have you seen technology for your work change in the 20 years that you've been in this commercial real estate space?
The ability to get yourself out there in marketing, the ability to speed up your process in just the mechanics of your job. So if time is an income provider and you can do everything on your phone, everything from answering calls to sending texts, faxes too, if that's where you're still working.
Wait, fax is what?
Yeah, fatal actions, something. You can supply the information right then and there, as opposed to I'll get back to you. It's relieved a lot of the I'll get back to you opportunities or calls that you have to do, because you can just give them the answer. And when you give people the answers right then and there, they tend to put their trust in you as someone to go to. The ability to market more efficiently, making phone calls, documenting phone calls, texts. The technology's been great that way. How AI is going to work into our business. Now it helps you write letters a little bit better, or emails, and maybe your brochures, you put your brochure in there. I use it to polish up long letters or marketing brochures. Other than that, it's still all my thought. It's all my input.
Yeah, no, excellent. So along those lines, this may or may not be a technology question. Or actually,
Mhm.
don't take it as a technology question. What do you see changing in commercial real estate in the next 5 to maybe 10 years?
Yeah, a lot has to do with the economy. A lot of what you've seen of late, like maybe the last 18 months, is shorter leases. You're seeing um, longer transactions in where you're buying or selling something. The closing of the escrows have been longer. Negotiations have been a lot tighter, and time consuming as well. Banks are cautious of what the government's doing, what the tariffs are going to do. Because in commercial, it's all about the economy. So in the economy, we just saw the stock market go wacko. One line from China is now has a deal closer. All of a sudden, the stock market went up and all that. So what I see in the future is the same of everything, just adjusting to what the economy is doing and the ability to react in a timely manner.
Yes. No, I can see that. We've seen that in all sorts of businesses that we've talked to, where the
Yeah.
just a certain level of uncertainty that we have. To your point, stock market going up with one statement, and it wasn't interest rate based; it was trade relations based, and obviously we've seen that go up and down over the course of you know maybe someone's period of time in control. We'll just leave that at that. uh, so, I
Now,
mean,
one thing too,
yes,
this is one that on the economy, one thing that happened in '08 for us, I can remember back then, that was a big lesson learned. What I learned a lesson from was that the repossessions, the defaults, the poor real estate market Well, in commercial, none of the bank, so none, a majority of the banks didn't let their buildings come back to them because banks aren't the property owners. That's not what they do for a living, and they're not really good at it. And it's so they did what they could to restructure loans. So you didn't see a lot of defaults. And when people see the tough times there and they're looking for defaults, quote unquote, good deals, it, the banks will work with the owners to restructure loans before they'll ever take back a property. And that's something to consider in our, when you're out there trying to project about what's happening and,
Right.
relating one economic situation to commercial real estate.
That's a really good point, and thank you for sharing that. I don't think enough people are keeping that top of mind in this, negotiation. And yeah, that does make sense that banks are not in the real estate business. They're in the lending business. And if they can continue to be
Hmm.
a lender and not an owner, they are happier for it. And so are their shareholders or just local owners, right?
Yeah, before I went into real estate, I worked for a company called W. Granger, which was an international, and they sold all their buildings because you could make more money selling widgets, which things, that's what they made their money on, than you could in real estate. So it made no sense to own the property that you're making maybe 5 or 7% annually on, or maybe 10, when you're normally making 25 to 30% on what you do for a living. Why not invest your money in that? So that was an interesting lesson. And it makes a lot of sense when people say, well, I want to own my own property.
Right.
As long as it's,
Doesn't it-
pride of ownership, how much is it going to cost you?
Right. Right. I know that's always considered a standard of success. Certainly, you start with like even home ownership. Sometimes home ownership
Mhm.
doesn't make sense for people either. I mean, it just depends on their current circumstance. I'd still argue that I was growing up, I was told, that's a step in your life. You're going to own a home. Well, some people don't
Yeah.
even necessarily need that lifestyle or don't want the maintenance or don't want any of these sorts of things. Same sort of thing makes sense and even more sense in the commercial space because you should be looking at what you're best at and your return on investment. So thank you for bringing up that point. I think people do have that concept that, hey, I just need to own the building because if I own it, I'm more valuable. You're more valuable time is going to be like your multiple of your revenue, not the real estate you own, unless you're a real estate company. I don't know. Would you agree with
And
that?
at the end of the day, it's always your money or our money and they can spend it the way they want. So if they want to own all their property and run their business and they're happy and their kids are going to college, who's to say? Because so there's all from a business point of view that makes sense too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would not want to put my thoughts and my biases onto somebody else at all. It is their business. I'd be certainly willing to share with them if I was an advisor, of course, that you should maybe consider this and then they can make a decision. Again, it's their business. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for bringing that up. Your legacy. What impact do you want to leave on the next generation of commercial real estate professionals?
What do I want to leave them?
Yes,
Remember where you came from. Have the humility to be wrong and make it right. And we're still in a business where people matter and relationships help us achieve our goals. And there's nothing wrong with working hard, especially when you enjoy it.
that is fantastic. And with that, we're going to be a wrap here. Again, this is David Urbach with Technologies Now. And our guest again today was Lloyd Wertheimer. Thank you, Lloyd, for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely.